guys, let's talk about transmissions on these 2025 Ram 3500s. I just want you to know I've been driving this thing for the last hour and a half running errands. So 138, that's the transmission temp, is what it's been hanging out at. I have not been telling, it's just what it hangs out at, you know, just empty, right? Just running errands. So I recently did a video on the motor and the goods, the bads, right? And then on this transmission, guys, I'm gonna tell you the good and the bad, but there's one problem. This transmission has not given me anything, and I repeat, anything bad to say about it. Just nothing. Like, you guys know on this channel, I'll say how it is, and if it's bad, and if it's junk, right? And if it's good, I'll tell you it's good. There's just nothing bad to say about this transmission. Just a stout transmission. Stout. 39,000 miles is not a crazy amount of mileage, but let me tell you, I did a service on this transmission. Shoot, if my memory serves me right, somewhere in the 25,000 mile mark. I think it was about 30,000 miles. Anyway, somewhere between 25 and 30,000. I dropped the pan on it, and if you looked into servicing these things, the whole tranny pan gets tossed and you put a new pan in with it. It's a built-in filter in it. Guys, that fluid that I dropped out of this transmission at 30,000 miles, 25 to 30,000 miles. I need to go back in my records and see. I know it's somewhere around 30, closer to 30 than 25. Let's just call it 30. Was far better shape than the tranny fluid I dropped out of the Ford 450. I'm not saying I beat the living snot out of this truck, but I do use this truck, and I do pull at its limit from time to time. And the fluid that came out of this truck was just solid at 30,000 miles compared to the fluid that came out of my 450. Yes, I own a 2026 450. So all you guys saying you should try a Ford, I've owned Fords, the new ones. Yes, they chose. I've owned 3 of them, not a whole lot of them, but, you know, still 3 is more than nothing. Or hypothetical, hey, I heard this. So the transmission out of the Ford that everyone's raving about, and let me tell you, the 24 model year Ford and up is a stout transmission as well, but I'll leave that conversation for another time. Even that stout transmission in my 26 at 4,000 miles, I want to say I pulled that fluid at 4,000 miles. It was far worse than this tranny fluid at 30,000 miles. And you're going to say, well, you're just hauling your butt. No, I towed quite a bit of stuff. Yeah, I made that 450 work too, but 4,000 miles and 30,000 miles, guys, don't confuse those numbers, man. That's just under tenfold more miles, and that will do a number on your fluid. Throwing that out there. It just depends how you feel, who you talk to. If you're gonna hold on to your truck for a while and you love your truck, change out your fluid. First time around, do at least 30,000 miles. Buy 30,000 miles. It's just, I saw what so I started running AMSOIL, and I saw what the AMSOIL did to my 10-speed Escalade. Yes, it's relevant. You know, just more relaxed shifting, firmer shifting. You know, you feel less line pressure. Yeah, I'll leave that. I'll make a separate video. How about this? I'll wrap up this video and I'll make a separate video why I do what I do with the fluid. Anyways, so this transmission on this truck, it's so precise. It's so well mannered, right? Even though it's not in its refined form, right? It's not in its best form. It's just, I love it. I would not question this tranny over the 10-speed Ford. Is there times I wish this thing had a, 10-speed? Yeah, and it's primarily that 7th to 8th gear. You know, I kind of wish it had 7, 9, or 7, 8, 9, maybe. It's just the gap in between 7 and 8. But I know why they did what they did. This is a hauler transmission, and if you're hauling something heavy, you just stay out of 8th gear and just keep 7th, right? And 7th is still an overdrive. But yeah, man, it's just, let's talk about downshifting. The way the transmission downshifts tells me a lot as well. It's not only climbing the hill, it's coming down the hill. It's not only excelling, it's decelling, right? How well balanced it is. I'm not gonna say Ison has a faulty transmission. I'm the first guy to tell you Aisin has a solid transmission. You know, all my 4th, 5th gens, they're all Aisin. I won't touch a Chrysler for what I do. But Aisin couldn't get their downshifts properly. Their downshifts were just not fine-tuned. Where this thing is very, very fine-tuned, very properly tuned, upshifting and downshifting. So, what's the whole point of this video, guys? I don't have a single bad thing to say about this transmission. Not once has this transmission made me scratch my head. Not once. It's not a new transmission. It's a new transmission in the Ram, but it's such an overbuilt transmission that it inspires confidence. It's not a sales pitch. If you're mechanically inclined and you get into this thing, the first thing you're gonna say is, man, this thing feels like a 6L90. If you guys driven a heavy torque converter Chevy tranny, I don't know why, but that it was a CTSV, that my buddy's CTSV that I drove, and you feel that heavy torque converter. That's how this truck feels. But I did change it, and we'll talk about that, what the fluid did to my transmission in the next video that I'm going to record. So the tranny fluid that I put in here is the AMSOIL fluid, but we'll talk about that in another video. This tranny is chilling. That's another thing we need to talk about, is temperatures. This transmission is just chilling at the power level. And here's the first telltale sign. What do you think I'm gonna tell you? Temps. The oil temps on this thing, and before you fall out of your seat and say, well, Ford had intended. Yes, Ford had intended for that transmission to run hot. But the sole fact that I could move that heat so much more on the Ford than I can on this thing tells me everything I need to know. So average day telling this thing's at 154. It's not 454. What am I saying? So 154 degrees Fahrenheit. That's an average day me towing with this truck. You know, my average trailer, just so you guys understand. Average weight behind this truck, so trailer and load, is anywhere from 10,000 pounds all the way up to about 25. Yeah, that's pushing the limit. That's pushing it at 25, but it does it just fine. It does it safely, and I feel perfectly fine. So with that kind of weight, okay, with that kind of weight, my temps on the flat are 154. In the extreme case scenario, I'm at 160. Ta-da! That's as hot as it gets, right? So 6 Fahrenheit, that's all I can move that temperature gauge. On the Ford, other hand, it kind of hangs out in the low 200s, creeps its way up to 213. It has a mind of its own. But I could easily get that oil up to 220 on the transmission. So I did notice the 450, when it feels pushed, I believe it has an electronic thermostat. So electricity controls the thermostat, not the thermo heat of the fluid, right? So once it notices getting pushed, it does open it up a little sooner, and I'm kind of seeing low 200s. It'll hover around the 203, 209 on the flats, so it gives it a little bit more room. But the fact that I could move it from 209 to 220, 223, I think it was the highest I've seen, tells me everything I need, and as quick as it moves, right? And keep in mind, I never towed heavy with my first two HO67 Power Stroke. My first was a 23 HO, and my second one was a 24 HO. Underlying the 24 is the better choice. Now that I have the 26 450, it's geared much steeper, and it's in its own little league. It does its own little thing. But that tranny does not compete, and I'd say that's the next runner-up. If this is the best, right? If this is the best transmission you could buy at today's day and age in a pickup, we're not going to talk about the Chevy. We're just going to leave Chevy do their thing. Okay, they're just nowhere near these two legends, so we'll just not even bring up that tranny before you say it's the same transmission. Just leave it alone. What does this conclude? Because you're average Joe's going to say, well, what's the better transmission, the 10-speed Ford or the 8-speed ZF8? 8-speed that they have in the Ram. Guys, the 8-speed Ram is the better transmission. And if I could have it anyway, I would love to have a 4500 Ram pickup truck. So I get my power, I get my comfort, I get my pickup bed over the Ford. And it's primarily because you buy a 4500 to tow heavy. And let me tell you, this engine handles the combination of this engine and transmission. Now I'm saying it wrong. This transmission handles the engine so much well, and more in a controlled fashion when it tows heavy. I much rather tow heavy with the Cummins than a Power Stroke. Yes, I much rather tow heavy with the Cummins, solely because the way it produces its power, how it executes it, how relaxed it is, and actually, flip side, how it excels, and the flip side, how it decels. That's a big thing for me. Exhaust brakes, service brakes, right? The Ford, what it boils down to, the Ford won't allow you to kill yourself, right? Spin out of control, excel out of control, but it won't slow you down. It'll just maintain speed, while the Cummins will actually slow you down. Night and day difference. And also, the Ford's way of executing horsepower and everything is a lot easier on the transmission, the way it does it, versus Ram. You know, when you have such low RPM and it's just exhaust braking or it's pulling, the lower the RPM, the more vibration that transmission, you could call it vibration, right? How else would you label it? Yeah, vibration. The more vibration has to deal with. So that's why you blow up clutches at very low RPM, right? That's why you destroy baskets, the clutch baskets, at very low RPM when you're pulling. So that's why it just stresses out the equipment pretty significantly when you have really low RPM. The vibrations, the vibrations just disassemble the thing, right? Some people call the Cummins the come apart, right? Because the whole truck comes apart with all the low RPM to produce power. So the fact that this transmission can handle, low RPM and such low end power, I'm not saying it produces more power. It just does it more in a brutal way, which taxes the transmission. I think that's the best way I can put it. Yeah. All around, the Ford's more the hot rod truck, a better daily, because it can hot rod, it can shoot out of the hole better. Cummins is the better, just like they're coming back around. They're the better workhorse. They're the more collected workhorse. One thing that will stand out significantly to you guys is how much less vibration the Ford produces versus the Ram. All right, that's a video for another time. Anyways, fellas, as always, may the good Lord bless you. May you all mighty fine day, and have a good one. Bye-bye.